An old man walked into the bakery. No one knew who he was. No one cared what he ordered until he overheard a stranger whisper to the counter staff, "I want the kind of bread, the one the owner never lets on the shelf." And just 20 seconds later, a paper bag was brought out. No label, no receipt, no explanation. The old man stood frozen, because this wasn't just a loaf of bread. It was a ticket into a hidden truth, one that could destroy the empire he'd spent 30 years building. And the most terrifying part? The people pulling the strings were the very ones he once trusted most. It was a regular Monday morning. The sun hadn't yet broken through. The city was still waking up, and thin wisps of smoke from kitchen vents floated into the crisp winter air. At the corner of 14th and Maple Street, a small bakery had just flicked on its lights. Harper's Oven, the most beloved bakery in the neighborhood, where golden brown sourdough loaves lined the shelves like works of art, where every garlic butter roll had a waiting list, and where regulars swore, "This isn't just a bakery, it's how you start a good morning." But that morning, someone entered not through the usual back entrance. No white dress shirt, no staff badge, no arrival like the founder of the most celebrated artisanal bakery chain in the state. Just a quiet figure, standing in line like any other customer. His name was Jonathan Harper, 61 years old, the founder of Harper's Oven. And that morning, the strangest customer in the room, wearing a plain gray hoodie, faded jeans, and unbranded sneakers, Jonathan looked like just another retired man grabbing an early pastry to aid digestion. No one knew that the man smiling politely in line was the one who had created every original recipe, trained dozens of master bakers, and turned a 16-square-meter bakery into a brand recognized by the James Beard Foundation. So why was Jonathan here, nameless and unnoticed? It began with an anonymous handwritten letter slipped into his office mailbox 3 weeks prior. "If you still care about Harper's Oven, go to the Maple Street location. Tell no one. Don't dress like the owner." He'd thought it a prank. But then came the branch reports. Sales were steady, yet single order. Cancellations had spiked unexpectedly. More disturbingly, 14 long-time loyal customers had vanished from the system over the past 3 months. No complaints, no bad reviews, just gone. Internally, every report looked perfect. And Jonathan Harper, the man who once baked 18 hours a day for 7 straight years, had never trusted reports that looked too perfect. So he returned. No announcement, no assistant, no undercover boss TV crew. Just one man, a customer, a pair of eyes determined to see clearly the thing he had built with his life. What about 8 a.m.? Jonathan stepped into the bakery. The smell of sourdough starter, salted butter, and fresh loaves enveloped him like a familiar hug. But less than 10 minutes later, while still torn between the cheese croissant and the caramel horn, a quiet but firm voice spoke from behind. "I want the old loaf, the one he never puts on the shelf." Jonathan turned slightly. A young man, mild and bookish, was speaking to the counter employee, but instead of confusion or questioning, the staff member simply nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. Less than 20 seconds later, out came a brown paper bag. No receipt, no product label, no words, and Jonathan stood frozen. Old loaf? Not on the shelf? Why was there something that wasn't allowed to be displayed? But was it handed off discreetly with a password? In that moment, Jonathan Harper knew. He hadn't come back to check on the quality of the pastries. He'd come back to uncover something buried beneath flour and yeast. A loaf not meant for shelves. A phrase not meant for menus. And a secret. One that could unravel everything he had spent a lifetime building. Inside the Maple Street branch of Harper's Oven, everything, at first glance, still carried the handcrafted charm Jonathan had so carefully built from day one. Oak wood shelves, unpolished by design. A glass tip jar with a handwritten label. "Thank you kindly." A chalkboard listing the daily specials with a warm note. Freshly made by heart. But like a beautifully baked loaf with a sour center, Jonathan began to feel something wasn't right. The first thing that caught his attention was the woman behind the counter. Name tag, Carmen. Around 26 years old, her movements were precise, her smile flawless. So much so it felt mechanical. Every greeting, every thank you, every product description was executed perfectly, almost too perfectly. But in her eyes there was no spark. No joy, none of that starting the morning with the scent of flour vibe that Harper's Oven once proudly stood for. And most noticeably, Carmen never asked for customers' names. Jonathan took note. The 5 customers before him were all familiar faces from the loyal customer database, yet no one was greeted by name. No one was asked if they wanted their usual from last week. That broke one of the company's core principles. We don't just sell bread, we sell the feeling of being remembered. But here, customers were just transactions. He moved to the waiting area, pretending to check his phone, but was actually taking notes. Next to him, a young couple whispered, "Weird. I ordered the honey butter loaf on the app last time, but it's not even on the menu here." "Maybe they keep those separate," the boyfriend replied. "I remember someone came in asking for loaf number 7. It felt secretive." Jonathan froze. Loaf number 7. At Harper's Oven, there were no items with numerical names. Every item was titled after ingredients and feelings. He had made that a rule himself. Bread names should have soul. At that moment, a middle-aged woman entered. No greeting. She walked straight to the counter and handed over a small slip of paper. No words, just a symbol, a sliced loaf of bread. Carmen nodded silently and disappeared into the back. 40 seconds later, she returned with a paper bag and said exactly 3 words. Same as always. No receipt. No thank you. No eye contact. The woman nodded and left. The door opened. The door closed. No one looked after her. Jonathan swallowed, hard. That creeping unease rose in his throat like biting into a spoiled loaf. It smelled like bread but tasted bitter. Someone was running this shop by a different set of rules. And he the founder was now a stranger in his own creation. Just then, a teenage boy about 16 wheeled in a cart of ingredients from the back entrance. Jonathan immediately noticed. The flour bags didn't bear the Harper's Oven logo. They were from a commercial supplier, the very kind he had strictly banned because it dulled the signature tang of sourdough and posed health concerns. It didn't stop there. The boy used a personal key to unlock the stockroom instead of the fingerprint scanner that was company policy for inventory control. Jonathan shifted his head to follow the boy's path and spotted a small side door cracked open, leading to the alley behind the shop. A shortcut? A delivery route outside. The system? He stood up, pretending to look for the restroom, and wandered into the hallway leading to the kitchen, the heart of every Harper's Oven store. There he saw a scene so simple, yet it made his heart sink. A baker, flour-stained shirt, rubber, gloves unchanged, was wrapping pastries directly on top of a closed trash bin. No stainless steel counter, no work table, just a quick flat surface to fulfill an order. Next to him sat a cardboard box, hand-labeled, "Not in system, off record." Jonathan turned away, heart pounding, his mind flooded with questions. Where are these baked goods going? Who controls the flow of untracked ingredients? Who are the private customers? And what exactly is being hidden behind the name Harper's Oven? A while later, he returned to his seat, pretending nothing was wrong, and then Carmen approached, placing a paper bag on the table in front of him, even though he hadn't ordered anything. "Caramel number 3 for you, sir. On the house." Her voice was soft, almost airy. Jonathan didn't touch the bag because he knew this wasn't a gift, it was a warning. The caramel number 3 bag still sat untouched on the table, radiating a rich scent of burnt sugar, cinnamon, and melting butter. To the average customer, it was a delightful treat. To Jonathan Harper, it was a silent declaration. "We know you're watching." And instead of backing off, he decided to dig deeper. After leaving the table, Jonathan asked to use the restroom, a familiar spot at the end of the hallway near the main kitchen. But instead of walking straight in, he sat on an old chair tucked against the wall, positioned directly next to a vent that carried sound from the mixing area. The bakery was still lively out front, but like always, the kitchen staff spoke loudly to drown out the roar of industrial mixers. And what Jonathan heard next sent a chill down his spine. "Marquez's truck comes at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Get 40 loaves of the old batch ready. No labels. The charity wants invoice records now. Did you copy the March batch files yet? Careful. That old guy today looked familiar. I swear I've seen his photo in HQ." Jonathan leaned closer to the vent. Another voice spoke, deeper, gravelly. Likely the head baker. "It's fine. As long as he doesn't go into the cold storage, we're good. That's where all the special orders are. Otherwise, treat him like any customer. Let Carmen handle it." Each word cut like a blade through a warm loaf. "Marquez's truck, 40 loaves of the old batch, charity invoice copy, cold storage, special orders." There was a parallel operation running inside the bakery that bore his name. An encrypted product flow, a shadow customer list, a delivery route that bypassed central systems. Jonathan stood, heart pounding, but he couldn't leave. He needed proof. That same afternoon, he returned in the disguise of the curious old customer again. This time, he stayed late, all the way until just before closing at 8 p.m. By then, the store was quiet. Carmen had ended her shift. Only 3 people remained: a janitor, a tall man wheeling a cart of bread into cold storage, and the head baker. Jonathan crept down the back hallway, following the sound of the cart's wheels. Through a cracked door, he saw it. A long row of brown paper bags, lined up like suitcases waiting to board a secret flight. None of them had labels. Each was marked only with cryptic symbols: 3B7Z0, no order numbers, no batch IDs, no customer names. Nearby, the head baker was on the phone. "Yeah, tomorrow morning's batch includes the cheese loaves, right? Make sure it's the ones that hold crisp for 2 days. Don't send the fresh ones by mistake." Jonathan froze. Hold crisp for 2 days, that meaning these loaves were already 2 days old, unfit for regular customers, and now being packed for delivery. As a special order, he stepped back, pulled out his phone, and opened Harper's Oven's internal app. No orders matched that quantity or time for the next morning. No charity deliveries, no wholesale transactions, which meant this entire shipment was off the record. And it was leaving through the cold storage's side door. Right at that moment, the door to the right creaked open, yellow light spilling across the cold tile floor. A figure stepped out, the same tall man from earlier, now holding a clipboard and a large bag full of cash. No receipt, no POS device, no ledger entry. Jonathan snapped a photo. His hand trembled. Not out of fear, out of fury. Someone was using the Harper's Oven brand to funnel defective, surplus, or expired baked goods through an underground system, profits going 100% off the books, charity paperwork forged, and most critically, the board had no idea. The cold storage door shut. The sound of bread landing in boxes echoed out. Hollow, dry, like the sound of truth falling out of the empire that bore his name. The next morning, Jonathan arrived at the regional management office, the central branch, over 15 kilometers from the Maple Street Bakery. No one recognized him in his tracksuit, baseball cap, and with a to-go coffee in hand. He wasn't there for a meeting. He was there to trace the trail. Using his founder-level anonymous access, Jonathan logged into Mirror Bake, Harper's Oven's central operations system. Orders, inventory, invoices, camera logs, employee IDs, and delivery maps. His goal was clear: find transactions off the books and identify who had the power to hide them from the system. Jonathan opened the Donate Inventory report, which listed all monthly bread donations to charitable organizations. The first line caught his eye. Donated 42 sourdough loaves to Portland Outreach, 7:30 a.m. every Tuesday. He checked the time, an exact match with the 40 old loaves mentioned yesterday. Jonathan searched for Portland Outreach, but it didn't exist in the list of registered donation partners. Its website had been offline since 2019, so who filed the donation report? The system listed a single approver, admin T. Martin. Jonathan froze. Tobias Martin, Regional Operations Director, his right hand for the past 8 years, a man he once considered a younger brother. Jonathan pulled up cold storage footage from the Maple Street branch, specifically 6:00 to 7:00 a.m. every Tuesday for the past 3 weeks. What he saw, an unmarked black pickup truck was reversing into the rear lot. A man in a baseball cap is wheeling out bread from cold storage, no scanner, no check-in logs, no one signed anything. But one detail most would overlook. The man used a level 3 security access card, a clearance level only Tobias could issue. Jonathan immediately accessed the system's card issuance records. Under Temporary Personnel Access, he found Access Card ID TR3207, issued by T. Martin, created 3 months ago. User, unregistered. Tobias had created a ghost card, an unlogged credential, and given it to the person handling the off-book deliveries, a phantom operator inside the system. Jonathan tapped his fingers lightly on the desk. The whole scheme was now in focus. Defective, excess, or aged bread was being kept, not discarded or truly donated. Repackaged, coded with internal symbols, delivered via a third party to special customers or discount resellers. 100% off the books profit, fake charity documentation, and all of it coordinated from inside headquarters. Jonathan stared at the empty screen. A sting hit the bridge of his nose. Not from lost revenue, not from tainted bread, but from the realization that the man behind it all was the one he trusted most. Just then, a system notification popped up. T. Martin has scheduled a mandatory weekly audit meeting at 2:30 p.m., Maple Street location. Participants, all shift leads. Jonathan let out a quiet chuckle. Perfect, Tobias. You just invited me to the party without knowing I'm the guest of honor. He stood, pulled out his phone, and sent a message to the internal audit department at HQ. I'll need an audio recording and a full export of the past 3 months of financial data from Maple Street, especially anything tagged off system. Name Tobias Martin. Bread can burn, dough can rise wrong. But when the oven is corrupted from the inside, someone must shut down the fire before it burns the brand to ash. 28 p.m. Maple Street. Branch had closed 1 hour early for a scheduled internal audit. All morning shift employees had gone home. Only the shift leads remained: Carmen, the head baker, Tobias, and Jonathan, sitting quietly under the guise of an anonymous corporate advisor. The small back room behind the kitchen was softly lit with a warm yellow glow. A round table stood in the center with bottled water and cookies laid out. Tobias was the last to arrive. Crisp white shirt, Omega watch, and that familiar smile. "Sorry, I'm a bit late." "Back-to-back calls today," he said. Jonathan nodded, saying nothing. He sat off to the side, baseball cap pulled low, arms crossed, eyes calm but sharply observant. Tobias opened his laptop and began presenting branch performance metrics: stable revenue, low refund rates, no outstanding customer complaints. Carmen nodded along. The head baker flipped through the attendance sheet, barely paying attention. But Jonathan didn't look at the numbers. He studied how Tobias spoke. Each sentence, each cadence, is polished to the point of being too smooth. Exactly like the fake reports he had uncovered the night before. "We're running steadily, no major errors. No need for major changes," Tobias said. "We just need to maintain our current pace." Jonathan stayed silent. Then, just as the meeting was winding down, he asked a single question. "What about the off-system orders? How do you handle leftover bread from the previous day?" Tobias froze for a split second, then gave a thin smile. "We process those as donations per company policy. It's all checked by internal audits." Jonathan smiled gently. "Are you sure about that?" Before Tobias could reply, the front door chime rang. Everyone looked at each other. The shop was closed. Who was that? An employee went to open the door. In walked a middle-aged man in a suit, tall, thin, glasses, phone in hand. His eyes were razor-sharp, and his voice rang out clearly. "I'm here for the special order. Sienna Dry 12. Same as last week, and remember, nothing gets logged." Tobias paled. Jonathan locked eyes with the man. Sienna Dry 12. No such product existed on any Harper's Oven menu, but he'd heard it clearly from the cold storage audio logs, the 2-day crisp ones. Loaves are unfit for regular customers. No SKU, no receipts, likely expired per internal policy. Tobias stood up, voice tense. You're early. That order isn't being fulfilled today." The man lowered his glasses, scanned the room, then spoke. "Looks like we've got someone new in the room. Let me guess, you're the one who actually runs this place?" The room fell silent. Jonathan stood, removed his cap. The golden light cast over the silver hair and steely eyes of Jonathan Harper, founder of Harper's Oven. Carmen stiffened. The head baker looked down. Tobias took a half step back. His eyes darted toward his laptop. Jonathan stepped forward. His voice, soft as thunder. "Sienna Dry 12. Unauthorized bread. No invoice. Cash transaction. Unregistered recipient. Security pass issued under temporary personnel." He placed his phone on the table. Pressed play. From the speaker. "Get 40 old loaves ready. No labels." That old guy looked familiar. "It's fine as long as he doesn't go into the cold storage." Tobias's face turned from pale white to deep red. "You didn't just betray me," Jonathan said. "You betrayed every customer who believed they were eating our best. You betrayed dozens of employees who believed in our mission. Bread made from the heart. And you betrayed the very oath you signed when you took charge of operations." Tobias stammered. You can't prove." Jonathan tapped his tablet screen. It lit up with full transaction history shadow order lists, extracted camera footage security badge records. "Prove it? I don't need to. I saw it. I heard it. And now, I have it all." one tap away from the FBI continuing the conversation for me. The man in glasses turned silently, left the room, dialing his phone on the way out. Tobias stood motionless, drained of color and will. The room was silent. Jonathan didn't raise his voice. He didn't rage. He simply turned to Carmen, who had once stayed silent as defective loaves were bagged and sold, then to the head baker who had packed old bread over a trash bin. You all baked with your hands, but you sold it with your silence. The meeting ended with Tobias being temporarily detained for an internal investigation. All data, camera footage, and financial transactions were handed over to the company's legal department, and Jonathan returned to headquarters thinking everything was finally wrapping up. But less than 12 hours later, he received a call from the Federal Trade Commission, FTC. Mr. Harper, we've been monitoring a pattern of irregular financial activity involving several artisanal bakeries, and after yesterday's incident at Maple Street, we have reason to believe that Harper's Oven has been unwittingly used as a staging ground for a money laundering scheme. Jonathan went silent. The word money laundering shattered everything he thought he understood, like flour scattering into dust. The FTC revealed, over the past 18 months, more than 50 suspicious records had surfaced related to anonymous donations to charity organizations, some of which matched the same fake partners Tobias had used to legitimize the donation of expired bread. They discovered donation invoices shared invoice IDs with those from discount consumer goods distributors, ones that dealt in near-expired stock. The so-called Sienna Dry 12 loaves were not discarded, but repackaged and sold cheaply to underground restaurants or unregistered event caterers. The cash from these transactions was funneled through 3 NGOs, none of which actually existed. All were linked to a fake charity, Clearfield Wellness Fund, an organization that claimed to rescue and recycle edible food to support local communities. Jonathan pulled up the website for Clearfield Wellness Fund. A simple logo, blurry photos, no physical address. The contact section listed only an email, admin@clearwellfund.org, when he ran that email through the company's internal security database. Owner, T. Martin. Registered IP, Portland Regional Office, the very branch where Tobias worked. Jonathan closed his eyes. Tobias hadn't acted alone. He was just the front man for a scheme that had been planned for a long time, a meticulous operation, disguising expired or leftover bread as donations, using the Harper's Oven name to legitimize inventory as handcrafted and clean, distributing to special clients, underground venues, unregistered events, even out-of-state shipments, laundering the cash through fake NGOs, sending it into untraceable accounts beyond company control, and all of it masked by the warm scent of morning bread. Jonathan exhaled slowly. He replayed a video clip from cold storage frame by frame. A figure appeared behind Tobias, wearing protective gear, a face mask, clipboard in hand. Jonathan's eyes narrowed. A familiar movement, marking boxes with cryptic symbols. He zoomed in on the name tag. Monsieur Devons. His chest tightened. Molly Devons, former senior financial assistant at Harper's Oven. She had voluntarily resigned after completing a 6-month contract, the exact time Tobias began rerouting off-book bread. Molly had once led the internal payment system. She could generate e-wallets, encrypt accounts, and knew every security approval mechanism. Jonathan whispered, "We weren't just being used to repackage old bread. We became a financial shell for an entire laundering network." That very night, he filed a report to the FTC, attaching all relevant data, camera footage, and personnel files connected to Molly. At the same time, he called an emergency executive meeting. No one was allowed to look away now. No one could hide behind not knowing. He opened the meeting with one line. "I used to think losing one bakery was the biggest shock of my life. But losing faith in people, that's what can truly kill an entire empire." 2 days after the emergency executive meeting, Jonathan stepped into the main office of Harper's Oven for the first time in over a year. No flowers, no applause. Just him and a laptop holding a list of 21 names. The red list. Each name belonged to someone connected to illicit transactions, or someone who had remained silent despite noticing irregularities in the system, even if they weren't directly involved. "I don't need them to be villains, I just need to know they chose silence over speaking up." Jonathan issued an immediate suspension for the entire mid-level management team across 3 key locations: Maple Street, Beaverton, and Hillsdale. At the same time, he contacted the FTC and arranged a closed-door meeting with the FBI, handing over every shred of data collected, including financial histories dating back to Molly Devon's tenure. Then the reform of the Harper's Oven system began. Jonathan took action by starting with 4 things. Temporarily shut down 4 out of the 13 Harper's Oven stores. Jonathan knew this would hurt revenue, but he said, "If one oven grows mold, you don't just scrape the top layer of dough, you tear up the floors and scrub every grout line." 2. Built a new blockchain-based transaction system. Every loaf, every order, now carries a unique QR code, scanned, stored, and tracked on an open system. No one, not even branch managers, could delete, alter, or hide orders. Recalled and retrained the entire frontline workforce. Jonathan rewrote the company's core values and launched a new doctrine: the Oven Code. Baked by hand, protected by honor. Every employee, new or seasoned, had to attend a cultural reorientation, where they didn't just learn how to bake, they learned how to protect trust. Established whistle line, an anonymous internal tip-off channel. Any employee who discovered misconduct could now report it directly to an independent oversight team, bypassing all managerial levels. All reports were fully encrypted and confidential. Instead of covering things up, Jonathan did the unthinkable. He held a press conference, public, transparent. He stood in front of the media, live streaming from the very site of the scandal, the Maple Street branch. He didn't assign blame, no prepared statement, just a confession. "I am the founder of Harper's Oven, and I failed, not in baking, but in watching who stood beside the oven." Then he unveiled a new initiative. Project Hearth, a truth in every loaf. The entire system would now publicly show baking date, production location, responsible baker oven temperature, current stock status, and if a loaf doesn't meet the standard, customers can flag it just by scanning a code under the wrapper. Just 3 weeks later, the Portland Tribune published a headline: "From scandal-ridden bakery to the most trusted name in artisan food, Harper's Oven rises again, serving what most brands forget: integrity." Jonathan received an email from a customer. "I once swore I'd never come back, but today when I saw that clear label printed at the bottom of my bread bag, I smiled." He replied with just 3 words: "Thank you." 3 months after the investigation, Harper's Oven reopened its Maple Street location, no longer lit with soft amber hues, but instead illuminated by bright white lights that shone clearly on every bread rack, every corner of the kitchen, every single person inside. Customers began lining up from 6 a.m., not for a secret pastry, but because they wanted to witness the first day of a reborn Harper's Oven. In the kitchen, Jonathan stood silently, watching fresh sourdough loaves come out of the oven. They weren't prettier, they weren't bigger, but they were real. They were right. They were clean. They were honest. Standing next to him was Chloe, the young staffer from the old Maple Street branch. now head trainer at the company's internal academy, the Oven Code. She smiled. You know, I once thought this place would shut down forever. But now I think it's only when bread burns that we learn how to fix the oven. Jonathan said nothing. He just nodded, his eyes glinting softly, calm and clear, like the golden crust of a loaf fresh from the oven. On another morning, a 7-year-old boy walked into the shop with his mother. He looked up at the menu, then turned to the staff and asked, "Mr. Which one is the bread made from the heart?" The young staffer didn't answer right away. He simply crouched down, picked up a tiny sourdough sample, and handed it to the boy. This one, because it was made by someone who didn't give up. In the small office above the bakery, Jonathan stood by the window. No more tense meetings, no more red flag reports or cluttered charts, only the crackle of baking crust, the steady rhythm of the dough mixer, and the sour tang of wild yeast slipping through the door like a gentle apology from the past. Bread isn't meant to last forever, but ethics can, if we dare to hold onto them even when everyone else chooses to look away. There are times when you have to disguise yourself as a stranger, just to realize how far you've drifted from your own ideals. There are loaves that look perfect on the outside, but are hollow within, baked from silence and greed. But there are also days when the old oven's flame reignites, not for a new recipe, but because someone had the courage to start again with the truth. And if you ever thought a bakery only sold bread, then you've never stepped into Harper's oven.